Hello. So today we'll be discussing on 100 landmark judgment in constitutional law. Let us wait for the 2 minutes. Let us wait for the people to join and get settled. The session will be for 45 minutes, and we'll try to be in bilingual, which means that the entire session will be in Hindi and English both. But the major part of it will be in English, of course, because of several reasons. But yeah, both the language will be used. And I'm told that on in 2 minutes that will be live. So I'm waiting for 1 more minutes. Right. So before we actually start the program, I'm going to share you a story, the story of 100 Landmark series. In 2016, when we just started the company, we launched this project 100 Landmark series. The series was about 100 most important judgments compiled in every subjects, like constitution, constitutional law में 100 judgments, criminal law, family law, सभी में we are about to compile this 100 landmark judgment based precisely on the facts of the case, issues of the case, and ratio of the case, precedent of the case, and the comments of the judges, right? So I think if you are law student or the one who is interested in law, you might know the importance of it. That what importance that does it play in studying the law, the judgments and the saying of the High Court and Supreme Court. The project got huge popularity. That around 120 researchers and 20 faculties all around the India joined this project, and they were ready to work on in free of cost. The project was got huge attention that the then Law Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Sri Brajesh Pathak ji, did appreciated the project, but the problem was that we couldn't manage because there was a lot of opinions from 120 researchers and 20 faculties that we were unable to manage it. And back then, it was a flop project with no revenue, no execution, and I was really disappointed that that was very pet project of mine. That was very one of the very loving project of mine. So that was quite disappointing for me. That what should we do now? After an year or so, like in 2019, what actually happened that we came up with the project of yearly compilation of the 100 landmark judgments, right? We started compiling the yearly compilation, and my co-author was Rishabh Kesravani, and the book was forwarded by Justice Vineet Saran of Supreme Court. That was a huge success, and just after implementing that project, we went on another 100 landmark judgment 2019-20 and 100 landmark judgment 2020-21. All of the three books were bestseller on Amazon, and thereafter we got we started getting calls to launch several judgments, several books in another subject also. So today we have two important books. One is 100 Landmark Judgment in Criminal Law that has already been bestseller on the Amazon, and 100 Landmark Judgment in Constitutional Law that is yet to be launched. But that is in the market, and that is in the market and the Amazon itself. The link of this particular book is in the description box. You can just click on the link, and if you want that book, you may purchase. But this is not a promotional video, so don't worry about that. In this particular webinar, we'll be discussing about the ingredients of judgments, the characteristics of judgments, and how judgments play a very vital role in formulating the entire concept of law and the evolution of constitution itself. Because we'll be studying the judgments from 1950 to till date, and there we will see that how our constitution has evolved from time to time, how Supreme Court has overruled its earlier judgment to come up with a new one, the more interesting, the more the human friendly, the more constitution friendly, and all. This is Amresh Patel, author of this book, and we'll be talking about several judgments and ingredients of it in this particular webinar. So the first characteristic which we'll see is that judgments are backbone to the constitutional principles. What it actually means. See, without judgments, it is hard to imagine the constitution or any other statute, because see, our constitution was implemented and enacted in 1950, 26 January 1950, and thereafter our entire system came into function, right? Now this is 2021, right? Many years have passed. 71 years have passed in independence, and there has been a lot of changes. The Indian polity was, we were socialist back then in 1950. In 1991, we were nationalized. We were liberalized. LPG model came into picture. Back then, it was bipolar world. Today, we have a similar world, or more over a mixed culture. Right, so a lot have changed in the international scenario and in the Indian scenario, right? So what actually these judgments do, that they make it worthy in the contemporary world. Even today, Supreme Court might have come up with some landmark judgment to eradicate certain evils, certain obstacles of the society. Like after lockdown, internet became very essential, and then thus given status of fundamental right. Back in 1950, there was no existence of internet, so there was no talk, there was no discussion on the internet. But after 2004, there were a lot of discussion on the internet, and after 2014, they became prominent of prime importance, right? So judgments are, according to me, judgments are backbone to the constitutional principles. We'll take examples of Ajay Hasia versus Khalid Mujib case in 1981. Right? In Ajay Hasia and versus Khalid Mujib case in 1981, what happened that Supreme Court made the Article 12 inclusive in its form. What does inclusive means? Like including more and more organizations, institutions, private sector in the definition of Article 12. I mean, why? Why Supreme Court wanted to include more and more organization in Article 12? There must be a reason, right? Of course, there was. See, fundamental right is very extensive and very liberal thing, and it grants rights to every individuals for freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom against arrest, equality, and so on and so on, so forth. But problem with a fundamental right is that it is only limited to public organization or whosoever falls in the definition of state, right? So if the organization, authorities, or individuals does not fall within the definition of Article 12, they can infringe fundamental right. I'm not talking about Article 21, the core of Article 21, but I'm talking about the ingredients of it, like Article 14, Article 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 23, 25 to and so on. So they can infringe a fundamental right, and you cannot claim it in court, right? So the objective of including more and more organizations in Article 12 was to protect fundamental right of more and more citizens, right? We'll be reading the bare provisions of Article 12 so as to understand the concept. Let me drink water. Sorry. So the bare provision of Article 21 reads as: the state shall include government and Parliament of India, government and legislature of states, and all local and other authorities within the territory of India or the control of government of India. Now we see these words, other authorities, right? Supreme Court interpreted the entire Article 12 using these two words, other authorities, right? What Supreme Court did in Ajay Hasia case will point certain point from that judgment, because that judgment is very big, and if I'll start explaining the judgment, then will be out of time. And also, if you want to read this judgment, it is already in the book, Hundred Landmark Judgment in Constitutional Law. You may refer through. So point D and E of this article, the judgment reads as existence of deep and pervasive the state control may afford an indication that the body is a state instrumentality. If the functions performed by the body are of public importance and closely related to government functions, it is a relevant factor to treat the body as instrumentality of government. Right. The broad analysis of these 2 points is that through these 2 points, Supreme Court has included more and more organization in the definition of Article 12, right? Like indication that the body is a state instrumentality. Indication that the body is a state instrumentality, right? If the organization, of course, after Ajay Hasia, several other judgments came into picture, like LIC of India and BCCI, of course. So several organizations came into picture, and they were given the status of state. But this was the first and the prominent judgment in its subject. And this judgment gave broad meaning to Article 12 so as to include more and more organizations. And after this judgment, more and more judgments have come to include with the same objective, right? So this is why judgments are backbone to the Constitution. Another characteristics of judgments are that they explain entire Constitution. If we talk about IPC, then you could just separate this line and write IPC. If you talk about any other law, so that would be family law. But we are talking about Constitution, so yes, judgment explains entire Constitution. How? See, we will not read entire Constitution and prove this point that whether they explain the entire Constitution or not. But we have this preamble with us, right? If the judgments explain this preamble, then we'll pre-conclude that judgment explains entire Constitution. So the preamble of the Constitution reads as: the people of India having solemnly resolved the Constitution of India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political liberty of thoughts, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of an individual and the unity of nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt and enact to give ourselves this Constitution. I hope this is visual to you. I don't know how to do this thing. Zoom. Yes. Is it visible now? Is it visual now? I think it must be visible there. So when you read this, line, right? Sovereign, democratic, republic, justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. Nowhere in the Constitution these words has been explained. Nowhere. What happens is Supreme Court in time to time has been explaining these words. These are not merely the words, but the principle enshrined in Constitution. So Supreme Court from time to time keeps on explaining these words. That is how the Constitution explain. The judgments explain entire Constitution. We'll see the evidences that sovereignty and unity of India, this principle was explained in Keswan Bharti case. Socialist as social justice was explained in Bhim Singh Ji and S.R. Bomui case. Secular, the word secular was explained in Indira Gandhi case and S.R. Bomui case. The word democracy was explained in Kuldeep Nayar case and S.R. Bomui case. The word republic was explained in Keswan Bharti case. All these words has already been explained in Constituent Assembly. Right? These words has already been explained in Constituent Assembly, the debates of Constituent Assembly. But after enactment of the Constitution, Constituent Assembly has no legal entity, is not legal entity, and the debates of Constituent Assembly is not legally enforceable. right? One can refer to it, one can keep it as insight, but they are not legally enforceable, so they cannot be they cannot be talked about. So when we read about preamble, see all of the judgment we just had a word, right? All of the judgment has already been mentioned in the book, so I'm not explaining each of the judgment. You can get the book and you can read all of the judgment. So when we talk about preamble of the Constitution, पहले तो let us discuss that why this preamble is important, right? What is so important with preamble that without it, it would be hard for entire constitution or India to function. See, every act, every statute had objective behind it. Right? When you read the act, there are some certain objective, and you should read that. When you talk about preamble of the constitution, of course, we'll be going through the that the debate of Constituent Assembly in this particular webinar only, where we'll read the lines of, we'll go through the lines of Jawaharlal Nehru, and we'll get to know that how much this preamble is important for Indian scenario, right? So we'll discuss it there. First, let us talk about the questions that comes with preamble, whether it can be amended. I hope that you are already a lawyer student, and if you're not, let me clear it. I will not make a suspense. Yes, it can be amended. Whether it is the part of Constitution, yes, of course, it is a part of Constitution. Whether preamble can be used to draw inferences from Constitution for its interpretation, yes, that can be done, but that is not enforceable. Right? There are certain judgments on all these points, like 2 or 3 judgment on this point, 2 or 3 judgment on this point, and 1 judgment on this point. All of these judgment has already been discussed in this book, right? So if you want, if you comment below that you want to discuss all the judgment in YouTube itself, we'll discuss that. But due to lack of time, I won't be mentioning all of the judgment, because that will take, each judgment will take 15 minutes, right? So if we'll keep on discussing, it will take more than an hour to discuss this particular judgment. But that has already been mentioned in the book. If you want, you can go through the book. Otherwise, you can just comment below that you want to discuss on this particular point, and we'll discuss in next webinar, right? So there are certain words used in preamble that is very important: sovereign, socialist, democratic, republic, justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Each word has certain objective behind it. Each word has certain reference behind it. And except fraternity, though fraternity has also the Indian origin from Vedas and Mahajanapadas, but except this word, all these words had different definition from the Western definition. In the Western definition, you will find something else, and when we will talk about Indian scenario, like from the judgment of Supreme Court and from the debates of Constituent Assembly, we will find that they are talking about something else, and that is not in the international scenario. That we are talking about something different, and of course we'll discuss it here only, and that is already been mentioned in the book itself. So before we go ahead, let us talk about the essence of the preamble and how it came into picture. Of course, you might be knowing that objective resolution was points jotted down by Jawaharlal Nehru, and it was promulgated in the Constituent Assembly on the 5th day of the Assembly on 13th December 1946. On this particular day, Jawaharlal Nehru came up with the proposal that this is the objective resolution of the Constitution, and the objective resolution was based on the criteria of Motilal Nehru. Motilal Nehru presented the same document in 1930, 26 January 1930. Right. So it was more or the same, but I cannot say, it is not safe to say that it was entirely the same. Right. So today we'll be going through certain lines of Constituent Assembly that Jawaharlal Nehru wrote at that time on 13th December 1946 in the favor of objective resolution. will be not reading entire resolution because it is very hectic. Not hectic, but it is lengthy. It will take time. And also, if you want to read that, what I will do that I will provide this document in the website itself, on the website itself, and the link of it will be in the description box, right? So what you just have to click there, download this particular PPT, and use it for yourself, right? So I'm reading out important lines from this particular resolution, so as to make it a little bit clear. It, however, seems proper that before we proceed further, we should clearly understand where we are going and what we intend building. I am reading it. You should also, I think it is visual. Please comment in the box, yes or no. Right. So I think it is visual, right? Yes. So I'll be reading it, right? And it has already been highlighted. Please read by yourself also, so as to make more clarity. We should present a clear picture of this plan to ourselves, to the people of India, to the world at large. Resolution that I am placing before you defines our aim, describe our outline of the plan, and point the way which we are going to tread. So, the next point to note down is that the resolution deals with fundamentals which are commonly held and have been accepted by people. I do not think this resolution contains anything which was outside the limitation laid down by British cabinet or anything which may be disagreeable to any Indian, no matter to what party or group he belongs. Unfortunately, our country is full of differences, but no one, except for us a few, would dispute the fundamentals which this resolution lays down. The resolution states that it is our firm and sovereign resolve to have a sovereign Indian Republic. Sovereign Indian Republic. We have not mentioned the word republic till this time, but you will well understand that a free India can nothing but a republic. Our intention regarding the states must be early understood. We do desire that all sections of India should willingly participate in the future Indian Union, but in what way and with what sort of government rests with them. The resolution does not go into details. It contains only the fundamentals. It contains only the fundamentals. It imposes nothing on the state against their will. The resolution does not concern itself with what form of government they will have or whether the present Rajas or Nawabs will continue or not. This thing concerns the people of states. It is quite possible that the people may like to have their Rajas. You see, we are not talking about, we are not implementing, we are not enforcing the democratic form of government in every sector. It is on their will. The decision will rest on them. Our republics include the whole of India. If a part within it desires to have its own type of administration, it will be at liberty to have it. I do not wish that anything should be added or subtracted from the resolution. I hope it is clear and clearly visible. If not, kindly, there are several resolutions on the YouTube. You may just click on 720 resolution if you have that data, and do try to read this document. Yes. I desire to make it clear that this resolution does not go into details. It only seeks to show how we shall lead India to gain the objectives laid down in it. Laws are made of word. Laws are made of word, but this resolution is something higher than the view. Note this line. This will help you when we're talking about the basic structure of the Constitution, right? Note this line. If you examine its word like lawyers, you will produce a lifeless thing. But one thing is, however, certain. It is not a law. but is something that breathes life in human mind. If it is passed, it will be a sort of place that, please note this line. If it is passed, it will be a sort of place that we shall have to carry out. With this expectation and in this form, I place it before you. Here is a sample of objective resolution, and this resolution was placed before Constituent Assembly and was adopted by the members of the Constituent Assembly, was edited by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, and passed in the form of preamble that we know today. So you remember we are talking about several words like sovereignty, secular, socialist, democratic, republic, equality, justice, and fraternity. We were talking about what these words, right? These words had different meaning, and if you want to relate to it, when we talk about sovereignty, see sovereignty. I hope that you know what sovereignty means, right? Sovereignty means the one who has ultimate power and accountable to nothing. This is the broad definition. So in Indian scenario, each government and each organ are accountable to one another. There is the system of check and balance. Check and balance. Check and balance. And this is how none of our organ, constitution, government, Supreme Court, or any other institution. We have generally three organs, right? I think you know. Legislature, executive, and judiciary. In legislature, we have state legislature and central legislature. Executive, we have state government, central government. Judiciary, we have Supreme Court and High Court, right? We have these particular form of government. None of them are sovereign. They can perform their function by drawing their power from sovereign, right? So who is the sovereign? People. People of India is the sovereign. You know, if you read the preamble again, we the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into sovereign democratic republic. This is the old preamble. There is two more words, socialist and secular, and integrity, of course. So the main point is, we the people of India means I, you, and many other are sovereign. We have ultimate power. We can do anything, which means that we can, remove the government. We can establish the government, and to the certain extent, we can make the law directly, no, indirectly, yes. Socialist. So the word socialist has already been explained in this particular case, S.R. Bhumoi versus Union of India. This case has been discussed in this book, 100 Landmark Judgment in Constitutional Law. We will not go into detail of this case, but if you want, you may comment below. Will, of course, because of course this is a democratic government, and if you want, you will comment, and of course we'll follow that. So if you comment, we'll discuss about this case. Indian form of socialism is different from Western form. How? You see, when India became republic and the Constitution of India was enacted in 1950, there was bipolar world. One was USSR and another was USA. USSR was communist and USA was capitalist. So the word socialist draw its essence in the Western philosophy from the Marxist socialism. And Indian socialism is different from Marxist socialism, right? Because we follow social democracy. We'll discuss about it. We'll discuss about social democracy in further in this chapter. Another word we have is secular. See, there are difference between Western concept of secularism and Indian concept of secularism. In Western concept of secularism, this is a state, and this is religious institution or religion. they will not interfere into one another, right? They will not interfere with one another. They will not contradict it, right? In Indian scenario, a state can interfere in religious affair for the welfare of people at large, right? This is positive interference. In Indian socialism, the state can interfere in the religious affair in Article 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. We will find, sorry, 28. We will find this, that their concept that state can interfere. We will find the case of the TMA Foundation and all, and that has already been mentioned in this book. So if you want this book, you can buy it from Amazon. That state can interfere, and the way they interfere, the process of it, everything has been mentioned in the book. We have another word we have is democratic republic. So the word democratic republic was described by Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar. Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar drew its philosophy of democratic republic from the concept of social democratic, which was promulgated by Mahatma Jyoti Rao Govind Rao Phule, who was teacher of Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar. Bhim Rao Ambedkar had two teachers in his life. One was Gautam Buddha, and another was Mahatma Jyoti Rao Govind Rao Phule. So he described democratic republic in reference to social democracy. Social democracy means including being inclusive in nature and including downtrodden section of society. Right? If these section of society will not join the central administration, right? Then they will form their own administrative way. Today we see the problem of Naxalism. Right? The problem like Naxalism result from lack of social democracy. Equality. So Indian constitution has two forms of equality. One is negative equality and other is positive equality. The philosophy and the ingredients of equality has been mentioned in Article 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18. 14 and 18 talk about negative equality. 14 also had the prospect of positive equality as well. Let us discuss. Absence of social privilege to any section of society. Right? Absence of social privilege to any section of society is negative equality. Provisions for adequate opportunities for all the individuals without any discrimination is positive equality. Negative equality put restriction, while positive equality gives upliftment, makes a program for upliftment of the society, like reservation, like programs for women upliftment, right? All these, and child and women welfare. All these programs, sorry for the writing, you will find this PDF on the website. You may download it from there, and you have comparatively good handwriting. If you want more handwriting, you have all the alternatives, right? So we have absence of social privilege to any section of society, that is negative equality, and provisions for adequate opportunities for all the individuals without any discrimination is positive equality. Why? We have already seen that. The word fraternity. Though the reference to the word fraternity has already been seen in Vedas, the philosophy of Vedas, Mahajanapadas, and several kingdoms in the ancient India itself. But the essence is similar to that of Western concept. Fraternity is understood as a spirit of brotherhood, the promotion of which is absolutely essential in a country which is composed of people of many races and religions. Let me read it again. Fraternity is understood as a spirit of brotherhood, the promotion of which is absolutely essential in a country which is composed of people of many races and religions. See, India is the land of diversity. You will see a lot many of religions than we know. There is not 4 or 5 religions that we know. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai and all. We will have many more religions in this country and many more castes in this country. Fraternity believes that all these religions, all these castes should have one goal, and that goal is of brotherhood and the objective of which is to form a welfare state. The case Berubari. Why we are discussing this case? Because this case is essential for knowing the preamble in its entirety. Because this case, this is the case where preamble has been discussed. So, and this case was already in the book, so you don't have to worry about that. If you want, you can get it from there, right? So, it was in 1960s when Pakistan asked for that there are certain territories of India which is in Pakistan. There are certain territories of Pakistan which was there in India. So Pakistan asked that please provide me those territories. It was not that pleasing though. So please provide me those territories which was there, and it was mistakenly by the Delimitation Commission got into Indian territory. Jawaharlal Nehru was a peace-loving person. He, when it was asked, he agreed to it. He signed an agreement. Though the people of Berubari didn't wanted to do so, they for the demonstration they cut their thumb, the part of like kachak. They cut their thumb, and that is not hilarious. That was a horrific scene that the people of there are 5 to 10 thousand of population in the Berubari region, and they cut their thumb and wrote a letter to then President Dr. Rajendra Prasad that we do not want to go in Pakistan. Kindly do something for us. The then President Rajendra Prasad used Article 143 of the Constitution, wherein the President can ask for advisory opinion of the Supreme Court. Right, the Supreme Court said that preamble is not a part of the Constitution, right? So, and it can't be amended, right? So, the Supreme Court said that if the legislature want to cede the territory, this is not SEED wala cede, this is SEDE wala cede. Cede means giving away a territory. So if the Union want to cede the territory to Pakistan or any other nation, he may do so by enacting a constitutional amendment. So ninth Constitutional Amendment Act 1960 was passed to cede the territory of Berubari to Pakistan. Right. Next comes the Keswan Bharti case in case 1973. Keswan Bharti case came into picture, and preamble was made essential and integral part of the Constitution of India, and it was said that preamble can be amended subject to basic structure of the Constitution. So again, we are now will be discussing basic structure of the Constitution. See, we somewhere or other, because somewhere or other we must have read the basic structure of the Constitution. What we don't know is that when Supreme Court came with the concept of basic structure, what made it do so? I mean, why did Supreme Court came with the concept of basic structure of the Constitution? What motivated it? I hope you remember that when you read this objective resolution, I was focusing on certain word that objective resolution are not binding and does not have conservative approach. However, Jawaharlal Nehru didn't want anything to be added or subtracted from objective resolution because it was very very precise in nature and very targeted. So that is from where Supreme Court draw the word basic structure of the Constitution, where if legislature wants to amend the Constitution, it can do so. The Constitution of India can be entirely amended, right? But certain basic structure cannot be amended, right? This is the provision in the Constitution. Now we'll get to know that why we are reading this. I mean, I have written a book, 100 Landmark Judgment in Constitutional Law, with a different approach, not with the regular academic approach. The book are written, right? So we are reading in the entire Constitution through the modes of judgment. So what difference does it makes to your life? If you are a layman, if you are not related to law, not much will happen, but you will find it interesting and will get to know your Constitution very well, right? If you are a law student, or if you are someone who is preparing for competitive exams such as PCSJ and LLM and APO, PCSJ and all, we'll find several questions directly or indirectly related to cases. Like here, the question has been asked in UPSC 2019. Discuss the doctrine of pith and substance relating to the distribution of legislative powers between center and state with the help of landmark judicial decisions. Right? Landmark judicial decision. Don't you think that is what we are, teaching this book? That is what we are giving to you in this book. You don't have to do anything. There are 100 landmark judgments which are most important, essential for understanding the constitution. Like this particular concept, the concept of pith and substance, was talked about in Premchand Jain versus R.K. Chhabra. That has been mentioned in page number 149. Kanka Gurha versus Narayanma, page number 151. Sajjan Singh versus the state of Rajasthan, page number 199. The case has already been mentioned, right? But we will discuss here a brief of it, that what is actually the doctrine of pith and substance from the judgment of Supreme Court. I'll read these lines, and I hope that you'll be reading there. As long as the legislation is within permissible field in pith and substance, the objection would not be entertained, merely on the ground that while enacting legislation, provision have been made for a matter which, though germane for the purpose for which competent legislation is made, it covers and expect beyond it. In a series of decisions, this court have opined that if an enactment substantially fall within the power expressly conferred by Constitution upon the legislation enacting it, it cannot be held invalid merely because it accidentally encroaches on matter assigned to the other legislation. I hope you understand. That's it. See, there are certain aspects, right? There are certain aspects in the Constitution where it is divided into there are certain lists divided into central list, state list, and concurrent list. Also, residuary. Center can make law whatever subject is there in central list. State can make law whatever subject is there in the state list. Concurrent, of course, both can make the law. And residuary, whatever new comes in the constitution, generally central or union has power on it. The act won't be unconstitutional because if center is making law and accidentally encroaches upon the power of, if state is making the law, accidentally encroaches upon the power of center. Such provisions from the act will be eliminated to maintain the constitutionality of other act. Understood? Another question from UPSC 2019, of course. India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of state. Explain. Do you think that the Indian Constitution is a federal? Discuss with the help of decided cases. One such case is S.R. Bomoi versus Union of India, has already been mentioned on page number 192. If you want, you can take reference from there. Another question, describe the right to life and personal liberty, whether that sentence is violative of Article 21. How the right to life and personal liberty guaranteed by Article 21 may be curtailed. Right. This case has elaborately been discussed in A.K. Gopalan versus the State of Madras, page number 43. Menka Gandhi versus Union of India, page number 45. It is already there in the book, but if you want, just comment below. We'll be making another video on these particular topics. Right. So, S.R. Bomoi case. We'll be discussing very brief about the concept because this is very interesting case. Though I find Keso Singh case the most interesting, where the entire Allahabad, there was fight between the entire Allahabad High Court and the state legislature. I find it most interesting. but this is not about my interest. So S.R. Bommai was President of India. Who was S.R. Bommai? So he was the Chief Minister from Janata Dal Party, now which is the BJP. Then it was Janata Dal, and he was Chief Minister back in 1988. And in center, you'll see the Congress government, Indian National Congress. So the government in Karnataka, he was Chief Minister of Karnataka. So the government in Karnataka was removed by the government in Karnataka was removed by center. Right. So Supreme Court sees this when Supreme Court the S.R. Bommai goes to High Court. High Court didn't entertain the case. He then went to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court entertained the case. The 9-judge bench of Supreme Court said that is the power used by center is arbitrary, and it must not have been used. Right. Supreme Court has given the verdict where it said that the president should exercise the power. The president should exercise the power only after his proclamation is approved by both the houses. Right. If both the houses, I hope you know what is both the houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So if both the houses doesn't passes the bill, the proclamation shall not become a law. Right. The significance of this judgment is that it talk about arbitrary power and how to curtail it. It also talks about socialism and secularism. Right? We have discussed this in very detail in this book. So why I am talking about this book again and again, and why I am encouraging law students and academicians to at least go through it. See, we might have read the Constitution many a times, but reading through the perspective of landmark judgment, believe me, is entirely different. It will give you the theme of evolution of the Constitution. It will make you understand the very basic principle, and also will make you understand how the Constitution was evolved. All the important judgments that has made the law or changed the law have already been discussed in this book. Notable precedents that has been cited multiple times have been discussed in this book. Also, the viewpoints of judges and their region has also been discussed in this book. We'll come up with several videos, and if you want any specific videos related to topic, comment below. We'll make that. I think I have taken a lot of your time. Thank you for being there. Bye. Take care.